Hi, this video is continuing practicing working in two-dimensional design, working with floor plans. And so our next exercise is, how to draw materials in floor plans. So again, this is a hand drawing class. So our materials are having more of the artist's hand rather than very clean and straightforward that you would do in drafting. So I quickly did put some construction lines in the boxes above. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be following the instructions posted online in the handout, and you're going to be following step by step just how to do these different materials. And most of these have to do with the floor plan. So just quickly, I want to go through how these, subtly, they look a little different. It's subtle, and just to kind of tell you why. So beginning on the left, these are all examples of tile. So number one is just using very clean lines back and forth, some dots, which my dog will start barking. And that's to represent more like granite. So if you look at granite like in a commercial space, like if you go into an entry of a bank, or if you've seen granite tiles on countertops, the grout lines are very tight and very close together. So granite is a hard material. It can be cut very exact. So therefore, because it's not irregular, the edges, they can be put together very closely. So when you want to represent something like that, maybe you want to illustrate with these close lines. Then moving to something maybe like a ceramic tile. So a ceramic tile is made of clay and then it's glazed. So it's made by that artist's hand, and so therefore it's a little more irregular than, let's say, a hard granite. So there will be grout lines that are spaced a little further apart. Still very nice, very exact, and then you can add some dots for interest, like lights hitting that space, or it's suggesting a texture. The image next to that, number 3, so that has grout lines, you can see, but what you're noticing is that the grout lines are further spaced apart and they're a little more irregular. So for those of you who maybe have saltillo tile out in your yard or in your home, I have it out in my backyard. I love that style. So those are made by hand, by clay. They're often, aged out in the sun or dried out in the sun, and sometimes even there's coyote prints on those, and so those are highly irregular, and so therefore need that bigger spacing in the grout lines, and that's why we're seeing that here. Then there's different shapes of tile that you might want to represent. Slate, again, is a little more irregular, and it has a nice texture to that, so the spacing's a little further apart. And here is marble, and the most important part of illustrating marble is just to show that beautiful graining in the marble, right? Not graining, but marbling, just as the name suggests. So I'm going to just quickly do this, although that you have the instructions online. I'm going to try to do some quick, some maybe with a little more care. And so for example, the ceramic tile. Now I have a big desk here, so I'm not going to be walking around my desk or trying to turn my arm around, so you'll notice me turning my paper. And the reason why I turn my paper rather than attaching it to the desk is that without that horizontal straight edge, it's just quicker to turn the paper. So I'm just going to do this very quickly. Hit, go, hit, hit, go, hit, hit, go, hit. And then you'll want to go through and I did that very quietly. Add some dots. This, on the other hand, is quickly, and I say this quickly. It's quickly adding some grout lines in, some spacing, and so you can see when you're doing this quickly that they cross over the edges. So this actually, you wouldn't actually see this corner in reality. It would look more like this, but this is just to quickly make the suggestions of grout. So again, I'm holding like this. And you're making a double line. So that was from week 1. Quickly. I'm just eyeballing this, so they're probably gonna be all nice and crooked. But you quickly see the idea. So this one is that shape that's a little more softened. So that's called a cushioned edge. So maybe you come through and do some construction lines. You can also measure, because some of you are just going to be more exact. And what you're going to go through is you're going to go through and you're going to go ahead and cushion or round. Don't overdo it. You're just going to cushion or soften those corners. So it's going to look more like, or like a cobblestone or something, or a saltile tile between. So different effect there, as is this. I'm gonna do it quickly, but if you don't want to have the gaps, then you have to go with a little more care. So here's with a little more care. And then this would just be kind of quick, where you're just quickly just making the suggestion of that grout. So with slate, or when you're adding some detailing, like most things that we do in this class, you'll have a punch line, right? There'll be some grout. Someone's coming to my door, dog will bark. It's voting season. And they're standing there. They don't know I'm recording. And then you're going to want to take a finer pen and to do the graining. So you can just be very light with it, okay? Very light with it. Make sure that you do go edge to edge in some places. And add in that grain. So go ahead and add in that. Then you can add some suggestions of texture. I remember when you're doing that, I'm not going to do that since my dog's having a hard time today, but remember when you're applying those dots, you're not just kind of pressing down on each dot. You're really allowing that to be loose in your hand and allowing those dots just really move a little more freely. In this example, some of them are maybe shaded in a little more to give the suggestion of some thicker grain. Beautiful. And marbling will be much the same. So terrazzo is, what terrazzo is crushed up pieces of glass and stone, oftentimes in really rich, pretty colors. It's then put into cement and like a white cement or a colored cement, and then polished. So if you've been to Sky Harbor Airport lately, you'll notice terrazzo. So terrazzo does have to have expansion joints, just like most concrete, and that's what you're seeing here. And then you're gonna go through, my dog will have some fun with this, you're gonna go through and place in your little dots. And you can also do a couple of chips, so things that look like diamonds or triangles. So you can put a couple little pieces of chips in there to create the look of terrazzo. And those chips are typically different sizes, but they're relatively small. So that's what terrazzo might look like in hand rendering. So get that all in, have some fun with that. Brick. So brick comes in different patterns. This is called the traditional common brick or running brick pattern, and it's staggered. So you as designers, if you're out there looking at magazines right now quite often, you'll notice that sometimes, brick doesn't necessarily have to be staggered. It can look a little more contemporary if the mortar joints are aligned. But traditional brick patterns are staggered. So that's what you're looking at here. You're looking at that staggered brick pattern with the mortar between. So to quickly draw brick, I just went through and I put 1/4 inch spacing. So I'm going to go over edges, but if you don't like the look of going over edges, then you'll want to be more exact and precise. So I'm doing double lines. I'm dragging away. So notice that as I'm drawing, I'm dragging away from the edge. And then you're just going to make that indication of the grout. To carry on. Looks like I skipped a row. That's what you get with dogs barking and men coming to the door. Here, I have a piece of wood between the brick or something. And then again, you can add that texture. And that's how you do brick. So I did it quickly with double lines. If you do not want to see that crossover, which really wouldn't occur in reality, then you need to be much more exact, right? You can actually place the bricks inside the grid. So instead of doing it quickly like I did, you can actually just draw in the brick. So I'm trying to show you here how you can just quickly draw a grid and then just add in the bricks. For stone, you want to use that nice, loose contour line, which is push and pull. You want to think about the spacing of the brick. Try to get that as close together as possible. And where you might find that you have a very unusual space, as you would. Just do that quickly. Fill that in. Where you find that you might have an unusual space, you know, maybe that's where you might put a small little filler stone or something like that. What you're looking at in the example is the suggestion of dimension. So if the light was coming here, even though there's mortar or grout between these, oftentimes if you have some more dimensional stones, you'll see a little bit of a second contour line to give it a bit more dimension. So depending if it's cobblestone, you'll do some more of the shadowing. If it's just very straight and polished, then you wouldn't want to do that. So yes, you could go through and maybe, you know, shadow in the grout, but most likely you wouldn't. Unless you really wanted to emphasize that there's a contrasting dark grout. But usually what designers do is they usually try to match the grout color to the stone or do something very light. So if you wanted to show this dark grout, it's where you would want to emphasize that, hey, I'm doing something very dramatic. I'm doing white stone with black grout or something like that. So pebbles, just go ahead and play around with drawing circles and pebbles in. You notice that there's a nice variety of size. So they're all small, they're pebbles, like gravel, but occasionally you have some that are bigger and smaller. This represents concrete block, which is a little more perfect than brick. And then the key to glass block is, if you can see in the demonstration, is you have that outer edge. So go ahead and put in the outer edge. And what I would use is I really would use a straight edge. Glass block is perfect. And then you want to get the finest pen or pencil that you have, and this is where you bring in that second set of lines that are broken. They're not perfect to represent that reflection that glass makes. So that's the key, not being done very well here. You could even put some 45 degrees, like light is hitting it. The key for wood, so we have 3 different wood examples here for you to practice. So on flooring, for example, the wood is planked, right? They fit together, they snap together with that tongue and groove. and the designer selects, the size of the plank, the length of the plank, and how she wants those, where they join, how she wants that staggered or not staggered, he or she. So the challenge that I find with hand drawing with planks is that too much emphasis is placed on the graining. So you want to make that suggestion of the graining, but it shouldn't be so pronounced. Now this is looking up close so you can see the graining. So that's the first problem, is that I see designers, as we move through the semester, they make these beautiful perspective drawings and then all this really ugly detail of graining, and it just kind of throws the drawing. So you just kind of want to make the suggestion of wood planks. Also, each plank is a different entity. So when you're putting in your graining, especially when it's this much of a detail, it needs to stop and start at each plank, right? It doesn't continue on. So here you can see a couple of those continue on, but they really are individual pieces. So now when we do a whole room, we'll just do the suggestion of graining, but up close, just observe that. So parquet flooring, popular, that's not going to come out. Popular during Louis XIV's reign at Versailles, where instead of just more traditional planked flooring that was popular in England, they came up with this really neat parquet pattern where they would turn the wood planks, they rotated them almost to look like a basket weave, and then they would have this border around it. So that's called a parquet design in wood. The last example is quarter sawn. So quarter sawn wood. So if you were to purchase like this, a desk or something, if you were to purchase a desk or a wood paneling that did not have planks, right? Quarter sawn is a type of cut, and it creates these really beautiful straight types of graining. So that's called quarter sawn. So different than what we would put on wood, maybe this would be something for paneling. Carpeting is just demonstrated through texture. So depending on what type of texture it is. So this is just suggesting like a pile with a pattern. So like a shaggy rug with a circle pattern. This is suggesting a woven pattern, maybe like a jute or sisal rug from Pottery Barn. This is indicating that there is fringe on the edge of the rug and then a little border within the rug. So I have to point this out because I teach fabrics. So typically in a rug, there's only the fringe on one side, not on all four sides. So if we have like the warp or weft yarns, it's usually just on the warp running up and down the rug. So that always bugs me in this example, but hey, practice that fringed edge. So I'm just going to do those quickly for you. Again, you're going to want to start just very quickly, putting in your planks. And then maybe the indication of some joinery. And then with a smaller scale pen, go ahead and put some graining in. And really observe in the instructions what grain starts to look like. You can even use the sides of your pen. And get some grain in. So there's the plank, right? There's the planks. And then there's the graining within. So things that I do notice is that some students don't take any graining edge to edge. They kind of all leave it in the middle with like a funky little border around it, so that's something to watch out for. You can do construction lines first if you want to. So for this, I would start by, getting video's getting long, so I'm going to do it quickly. Get this drawn in, get that drawn in, and then get your planks. And then put your graining in. Okay. So get that in first. Follow the instructions. Get that put in. Quarter saw, that's a great time to push, release, press, release, press, twist, release. So this is a really good wood quarter saw is to practice push, practice some of those lines, and then really maybe being light on the page. So have fun with that. Have fun if you want to. Have fun getting all those dots in for this example. So by spacing these closer together, you're starting to say that there's a pattern there. If it was just a solid carpet, you would just do the dots like this. Draw construction lines for something that looks more woven. So I should really be just pulling away from that. And then go through. You can bring in your crosshatch. And then that's going to make this suggestion of something like a sisal or woven rug. And then fringe. I'm giving the indication of a very irregular fringe. More formal rugs would be more perfect equal spacing, and it would take a little more time. I did mine very quickly and very irregularly, and so a very nice informal rug. So I'm just noticing that all the 1970s looks are coming in rugs and pillows with all that nice texture and fringe. So you can practice some of that. Maybe there's a little border at the end. So the details should be with thinner lines. And then your fringe and your outline can be darker. You can go back in with some second lines and maybe give the suggestion of a shadow. That's the end of this posting, and enjoy following the instructions. This was just a quick demonstration to kind of point out what we're doing here and for something for you to watch. But go ahead and do your materials and turn those in. This is what's minimum required, and of course you can do more.